to our live pictures, you can see magnificent, I'd hate to say that I know what those are, but must be mirages flying over, and beautiful, the colours of France. Everyone getting very excited for the 2012 bid. It comes out in about 5 days from now, so everyone trying to pull out the stops. Tour de France today as well, so it's all playing good for them.
Massive day for France, but I think what's important, you can see the sky is clear to some extent. It is not raining, and that's what we wanted to see. It is very, very important that this qualifying session takes place in dry conditions in its entirety.
Crowd has picked up. They're expecting a capacity crowd there tomorrow for the French Grand Prix. Stunning. Still a lot of cloud there, but as Gary says, it is dry. Gary, characteristics of the track as we wait for our commentators. I mean, you know this track very, very well. From the pictures we see every year, it's a magnificent track to drive.
As far as driving it is fantastic. It's it's the track that you can really push. You can attack the track, and the time is going to come to you. Lots of super fast corners in there, and obviously safety to go with it. And I think that's what the drivers want these days. You feel really confident, and you can enjoy pushing your car to the maximum. One of the better circuits out there.
Going to be a huge amount of Renault support this weekend, home Grand Prix for them. You mentioned in the third free practice session, Gary, that it's great to see all of these. For years we've just seen red everywhere. Now we're seeing the followers of the other teams coming to the fore as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it just shows you what a guy like Alonso has done for Spain, and obviously that's worked very well for Renault in Mile 7. That his colours are the same as theirs, but it's good to see. We've been so used to seeing the seas of red, and we've got now the blues coming in there, and obviously being the French Grand Prix, we expect to see a lot of it, and it's just nice to see that the sport is growing like this, and there's support for different teams coming in, and I think it's just going to go from strength to strength.
Well, these are great pictures coming in from Magny-Cours. It's a 4.411 kilometer track. There is the starting grid. It will be Ralf Schumacher, because he did not take part at the Indianapolis Grand Prix at all, and then it's actually the way that they qualified for the US Grand Prix. Coulthard, Heidfeld, Clean, Villeneuve. So Montoya got a little bit of a tough position, but don't discount it. I think Montoya is super fast.
Yeah, Montoya is quick this weekend. The McLaren is looking good, and as I said just now, I think he really wants to take it over and beat Raikkonen. We've been waiting to see this internal team battle take part, and I think it's really starting to hot up now. Really a man to watch out for.
Alonso, Fisichella right next to each other, and then we get Button. Raikkonen is going to be penalised 10 positions as it goes. Then Trulli, and then I suppose you've got to look just to the end for Barrichello and Michael Schumacher, what they can do. On that page, Fisichella, Button, Raikkonen, Trulli, Barrichello and Michael Schumacher. Discount Raikkonen, any one of those I think could definitely go for the pole today.
Most definitely, and it's the first time I've really seen Michael Schumacher in a position, after Kennedy was looking okay for him, but I think really he's in optimum track position right at the end of the session, and I think this is the kind of track that is going to get better as the session goes on. Definitely, as we mentioned, it did rain overnight. The track is going to continue to keep getting better and better with the cars driving around on it, so Michael Schumacher I think looking pretty strong.
It's going to be good. Ralf Schumacher, unfortunately, second quickest in fourth free practice. He's going to be first out there. Just another reminder, in the next minute or so in Supersport 7, the tennis will start from Wimbledon, the continuation of the men's semi-final, Roddick versus Johansson, and then of course that'll be followed by the ladies' final, which should be awesome. There we go, Ralf Schumacher for Toyota getting ready. We're about a minute away until the pit lane opens. Going through the Drivers' Championship in the points, Alonso still with a healthy 22-point lead over Raikkonen, but Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello split by 5 points and seem to be also be in the equation. But I think, Gary, this Grand Prix and next week in England are vital Grand Prix for Ferrari if they are going to be challengers for this year's championships.
That's right. It's going to happen now, and at Silverstone or not. And I think that's where it's come down to this point in the season where it's going to happen. But if they can keep the car consistent and consistently fast, I think they really have got a chance of beating Alonso. Alonso in Canada, I think, showed a couple of signs of weakness. He really got agitated in the car, stuck the car into the wall. So I think Michael Schumacher, Kimi Raikkonen, they know what they're fighting against now. And between the two of them, it's going to be interesting to see if Alonso can withhold the pressure that they're going to apply to him now.
That is going to be fascinating for the rest of the year. We saw the Constructors' Championship with Ferrari leapfrogging so many teams with the 18-point haul from the US Grand Prix, which took place 2 weeks ago. Toyota getting ready. The pit lane, I think, is just about to open. We're just waiting for our commentary. There's the air and track temperatures. Not much change from this morning. A little bit hotter in terms of track temperature, but I don't think it's that significant at the moment. But as you mentioned, Gary, it could favour the Bridgestone runners just a little bit.
Yeah, it could, and we've seen they've also had a hard year when it comes down to getting the right tyres for the cars. But it should favour them. Who knows? It was so close to call early on. I don't think we can really say exactly what's going to happen.
Ralf Schumacher exits the pit lane at Magny-Cours in his outlap. James Allen, Martin Brundle, we're just waiting for them. And it's back to what Formula One does best, and that is getting on the track and racing. All 20 cars are there this weekend, and it's fantastic to see yet again.
And you hear Ralf Schumacher just riding his left foot on the brake as he goes up the long straight through the Gulf sweep. And that's obviously just to warm up the carbon brakes, because obviously these brakes need an immense amount of heat to work.
Let's cross over to James Allen, Martin Brundle for official qualifying for tomorrow's French Grand Prix.
This afternoon and again tomorrow in the Grand Prix. This is the Magny-Cours circuit then. Billiard table smooth, as we've heard. 2.75 miles long. Pole position today, we're expecting somewhere in the region of the mid 1 minute 14, something along those lines. Interesting track, 3 high-speed sections here, and at 3 corners of 50 miles an hour. So it's really something of a schizophrenic track. Ralf Schumacher here we are on board with him. Pole sitter here before, a winner here as well with the BMW Williams team. And the drivers are really divided about this track. Some of them love it and feel it provides them with a tremendous challenge. Others find it a little bit dull and uninteresting. But it generally turns out a decent Grand Prix. This last sequence of corners are just added a couple of years ago. Very tricky for the drivers getting the cars up and over the chicanes. And Ralf Schumacher, who was second fastest this morning on a 1:14.6, celebrated his 30th birthday a couple of years ago, is out and running and into the long right-handed Estoril corner that leads out onto the back straight.
Slow out lap is what you need here. You get so much mechanical grip from fresh tyres, you don't want to give any of it away as you're going to start your hot lap. He's locked the front brake into the Adelaide hairpin, will cost himself quite heavily there. It's after the sector point, first sector point, so it won't show up for a while, and that will cost him very dearly. That's one of the penalties you pay for going so slowly on the outlap. Your brakes are not fully up to operating temperature. This is the 180-degree corner. Full throttle through the right and left now. It's absolutely nothing to do really for a Grand Prix driver through here. The cars are so good. But this one catches your attention. The Imola chicane. Tremendous speed as you drop down the hill. And you have to have good direction change to get into the tricky little Chateau d'Eau, the water tower corner. Down the newer area, then sweeping into what they call the school corner, Lycée corner at the bottom of the hill, and another one where it's easy to run a little wide, and you want to straighten the car up as early as you can to launch it across those curbs, just trying to balance the weight and the weight distribution as you land and hopefully keep it pointing in the right direction. A late 1 minute 15 for Ralf, not a great time. He is first to run. There have been Porsche Super Cup cars out there. Nothing against Porsche or the Super Cup, but they run a much harder tyre, and it tends to lift some of the Formula One rubber, put down the harder rubber, and you saw many replays there of Ralf locking the front tyre of the Toyota, and his 2 old bosses, Frank Williams and Patrick Head, looking on. Coulthard then running second. You could argue he was the last one to pull out of the Grand Prix in Indianapolis, so maybe he was the last one to retire there of the Michelin runners, but unfortunately for him, he's been allocated slot 2 this afternoon, an early runner, and he'll take some pain for that too, as did Ralf.
Out onto the back straight then, 6th gear, approaching 200 miles an hour. They break from 200 miles an hour down to 50 here in just 3 seconds. It's awesome to watch when you stand out on that corner, the brake disc glowing, the enormous amount of braking force on the drivers, their heads pushed down into the cockpit, such is the force. Here we go then, Nürburgring chicane, tremendous place to spectate, particularly from the back. You watch the cars darting into there. They launch the things up over the curbs, the slow 180 corner. But my favourite corner on this racetrack to go and stand next to, and particularly from the back on the left-hand side, is this one here, the Imola. The way these cars change direction through here is absolutely spectacular. The TV camera doesn't really capture it. You have to be down there on the ground to see it. But Martin, when I went down there yesterday afternoon, the standout cars without doubt were the McLarens, the Renaults, and funnily enough, the BAR of Jenson Button.
Yeah, the BARs look good. I was down at turn 1 this morning and saw a similar thing, but actually, amazingly, 20 different ways from 20 drivers to go through that corner. Coulthard goes over the line, with a 1:16. I think he'll be quite disappointed with that. He's running race fuel, but he pulled something back on Ralf Schumacher in that middle sector after Schumacher's outbraking of himself down at the hairpin. But Coulthard then a long way behind the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher, and he would be disappointed not to be in the 1:15s for sure.
Yeah, he was 7/10 slower than he went this morning. Gunter Steiner, technical director of Red Bull Racing, didn't like it very much. Ralf Schumacher 1.1 seconds slower than he went this morning. Well, we've obviously seen over the course of one lap qualifying, the track does tend to get a lot faster with the first 5 or 6 cars going out. Magny-Cours not so much of an issue. The track doesn't change as much here as perhaps some other places, so quite a smaller penalty perhaps for the earlier runners here in comparison to other places. Here's Nick Heidfeld then, first sight of the revised, heavily revised BMW Williams. Obviously the news coming through, the confirmation this week that BMW are to join forces with Sauber from 2006 onwards. They're taking over the team. It will be known as the BMW Formula One team, and that will bring to an end the relationship with Williams Formula One. So a difficult moment this for the Williams team. Heidfeld certainly in the paddock favourite to land one of the BMW seats for next year. This is a track he enjoys, one here in Formula 3 and in Formula 3000, and he's certainly one of in the camp that likes Magny-Cours.
You see, they can use so much of the curbs now. You had to stay, before when this track was first created, so far away from those curbs in the high-speed chicanes. Otherwise, you were just launched into the sky. But the problem is, it takes away some of the accuracy. You can just throw the car in, and you know you've got a bit of space to breathe if it slides unexpectedly or tries to get away from you. I don't like it. There should be a higher penalty for being, or bigger advantage for being more accurate. Heidfeld goes second, a fraction ahead of Coulthard, and you have to say that Williams that we've been eagerly looking forward to has not really shone this weekend. Ted has further news for us.
Yeah, down at Red Bull, and Christian Klein lost an hour of very valuable dry weather setup time yesterday because of a crash, but he says that the car is easier to drive here than some of the previous circuits because of the smooth track as we referred to it earlier. But both Red Bulls, and this would be stood up by DC's lap, both Red Bulls not at all happy over the curves of the last chicane. They're losing a load of time through there.
Well, 3 runners so far, all of them, judging by the reaction of their people back in the pits, putting in disappointing laps. Here's Christian Klein, managing to keep his foot on the throttle through the long right-hander. 1 or 2 you'll be hearing later on, having to feather the throttle. We hear Massa's particularly interesting through there. He kind of guns the throttle in a real staccato fashion. Hopefully we'll hear that. But Christian Klein has been a few tenths behind David Coulthard throughout the weekend. Coulthard did a 1:16.4. At the moment, Klein is on target to, well, he's a tenth slower than Coulthard in the first sector, so he's quite close to his teammate.
He's taking a wider line into the 180 corner, and they're really struggling for basic fundamental grip. You can see them running much wider than they were at the end of free practice. We did have a damp track this morning, which tends to take away quite a lot of the grip overnight. They have to start reapplying the rubber down onto the track, clearing away the rubbish overnight. And of course they lost a lot of track running too in that with those track conditions. Dan, just 2 corners to go then for Klein. You tend to finish the corner very late here and then just start pointing and getting the weight onto your left rear before you hit the curbs, and he goes just behind Coulthard. It's 3rd and 4th then for the 2 Red Bulls, and again I think they'll be disappointed with that. I think they had a chance here to be somewhere between 8th and 12th for those 2 cars. That's looking more like 12th to 14th to me.
Yep, so everyone disappointed so far of the first 4 to go out. Ralf Schumacher fastest, Heidfeld second, Coulthard third, and Klein fourth. You can see the amount of energy as the cars leap up over the barriers there. Really does shock the car, doesn't it? Shocks the driver and his arms. Now here's Jacques Villeneuve. He has had the upper hand over Felipe Massa throughout this weekend. He's driven very smoothly, very aggressively. Massa not able to get on Villeneuve's pace. So great news for Jacques Villeneuve, who described the announcement of BMW buying Sauber as great news for me. I wonder in the fullness of time whether that will prove to be true, or whether in fact BMW will dispense with his services before they even get started. Time will tell, but at the moment he's having a good weekend. Can he follow through in the qualifying session? Sauber once again slowest of the Michelin runners in the free practice session. The car just lacking aerodynamic downforce, really. They've got a fantastic state-of-the-art wind tunnel, which is definitely one of the reasons why they were attractive to BMW. That and the fact they don't carry any debt, I would imagine. But they're not really able to spend enough time in that wind tunnel, and certainly with BMW's resources, they will spend a lot more time. Look at this, though. Villeneuve really in his element here. 2/10 faster than Ralf Schumacher after 2 sectors.
Yeah, Schumacher had a problem, of course, didn't he, with that down at the Adelaide hairpin. So that is why Villeneuve's so much quicker in the middle sector. He can hang it together, though. He might just be having his best qualifying of the year. Villeneuve, just with this rather bumpy chicane again. Another man giving the highest part of the curbs a wide berth, and fastest he does go. That's a good effort from Jacques Villeneuve.
Certainly is. Villeneuve fastest then. Ralf Schumacher second, Heidfeld third, Coulthard fourth, and Klein fifth. Next man out, one of the big favourites here this weekend, Juan Montoya, in just a moment. Qualifying for tomorrow's French Grand Prix here at Magny-Cours, the 10th round of this 19-round 2005 World Championship, literally the midpoint in the championship. There's Ron Dennis, boss of the McLaren Mercedes team. Juan Montoya is out on track, and with Kimi Raikkonen having to take an engine penalty, 10th place drop on the grid because of changing an engine last night, that leaves the way clear for Montoya to have a strong weekend. And I have to say that with aerodynamic updates and a new specification engine, a big step on the engine from Mercedes, this is the standout car of Formula One at the moment. Watch it out on the track, watch it on the telly. It is brilliant, it's glued to the ground. And we'll enjoy this lap with Juan Montoya as he chases his first pole of the season and his first Grand Prix victory of the season as well with the McLaren Mercedes team. Here he is, up to 200 miles an hour then, coming down into the Adelaide hairpin. We saw him locking his brakes a couple of times on the outlap, which was interesting considering he wasn't going particularly quickly on the outlap, but I'm not sure what that was all about, but the braking system seemed to work there for him.
they worked fine. There was a little bit of something blue smoke coming out of the back, whether that's the under tray rubbing. Of course, they're in full race trim now, and he's dropped it on the way into 180, not badly, but enough to have to fight it back to the apex of the corner. He had a good margin in his pocket, but that was not a good corner there for Montoya. He's a quarter of a second up, but if he wants pole, it's going to have to be the perfect lap. Chateau d'Eau, this car is supreme, as you said. They can get on the throttle so early and so hard. It's just stuck to the ground.
The speed through that second fast chicane was fantastic. Watch the way it slides through the slow corners as well. The back just comes around exactly what Montoya wants it to do. It does it. It's the most obedient, supple, compliant racing car. And look at that, 0.3 of a second faster than Jacques Villeneuve. It could perhaps have been half a second without that little mistake in the 180. But nevertheless, that's a decent lap from Juan Montoya. 1:15.4. Difficult to get any sort of feel for what pole's going to be then at the moment. There's all of these times quite significantly slower than we saw in free practice this morning. So that would tend to suggest people have put a little bit more fuel in. Perhaps they were thinking about a 3-stop strategy this morning when they were doing the free practice runs. But in fact, they're erring more towards a 2-stop strategy. You can do either here. Listen to the throttle. Massa, that's what I was talking about, that punching effect he does.
Yeah, I don't understand why Massa's doing that. It just breaks the back end loose and introduces traction control early. He's just got into a nasty habit of stamping on the throttle pedal, but he's sticking with that. And Michael won this race, of course, last year with 4 stops, but because he could, really. And he had such a fast car, it almost didn't matter which strategy he used here. But Massa a fraction up at the end of the first sector, and that's the end of it's comparing him with Montoya at that point, rather than necessarily the fastest time there. But in the second part of the lap now, this is such a wonderful corner, but you can head off here, spear off here and have a tremendously big accident. Because you're carrying so much speed, then you go straight onto the gravel and start bouncing all over the place. Just a touch wide in Chateau d'Eau, but no problem, except you have to turn a bit harder, maybe introduce some more traction control. 2 corners to go.
So Massa, who's been slower than Villeneuve throughout the practice sessions, he's on target to be very, very close to him indeed. Villeneuve currently second. Massa nicks it from him by, well, less than a tenth, really, just over a tenth in fact, and he's just behind Juan Montoya. So the 2 Saubers, nothing really much to choose between them. That's Massa's family there, I believe, and Ted Kravitz has some news for us.
I'm down at Williams. Mark Webber was saying earlier that he's been trying to get the second sector of this lap right. The car feels balanced, it's not bad, not oversteer, not understeer, but then you just look at the lap times and it's apparently nowhere. He puts it down to a lack of grip. And interestingly, Martin, a lot of people in this team now starting to talk openly about a lack of power as well from the BMW.
Well, of course, the cat is out of the bag on that front, isn't it, with the news that BMW are moving on next year. And, well, Williams are looking around for a new engine. Honda, Toyota as customers, possibly Cosworth as well. But Cosworth have a small number of people working on the engine program compared to the, say, 200-odd who work for BMW and Honda on their engine program. So it's a difficult moment, as I said before, for the Williams team, particularly because they've brought this tremendous amount of aerodynamic updates on this car this weekend, and it hasn't translated into lap time, has it, Martin?
No, they must be very disappointed with that. There's certainly been a bit of a crusade to let it be known they are disappointed with the BMW power, but maybe that's a bit of counter-punch for some of the other frictions and press stuff that's been going on there. It's a shame that relationship's broken down in the way that it has. What will Williams do next year? Will they stick with BMW? Will they go to Honda? Where does it leave Jenson Button? Will he move anyway? And where does it leave Nick Heidfeld and Webber? Heidfeld must have 2 or 3 good options anyway, I would have thought. Webber, we understand, is nailed to the team contractually. But that's going to be an intriguing story as the summer unfolds.
And Jenson Button as well. What's going to happen with him and the obligation to go there? Is he going to try and find a way out of that, try and stay where he is or go somewhere else? That's certainly, as you say, the summer's going to be the big story there. Webber goes ahead of Heidfeld, who's standing there with Mario Tyson, the boss of BMW Williams. Webber slots into 5th place, the lap that's 4/10 quicker than his teammate. So 3rd at the moment, Jacques Villeneuve, and Louise Goodman is with him.
Jacques, good effort and a pretty good result for you as well.
I'm quite happy. It's a lot quicker than we've been all weekend, and qualifying went well, so I'm very happy about that.
Teammates just gone a tenth quicker. That must be a bit annoying though.
How much quicker?
10.
Oh, that's fine. Considering our strategies as a team, I'm actually quite happy to be within a tenth of him, so that's good.
But we'll find out tomorrow. What he means is carrying more fuel. It's 0.4 of a second for every 10 kilograms of fuel, 3 laps worth of fuel you carry around here. It's a high penalty, one of the higher penalties of the year. Sato's been flying in the BAR, and he's fastest man of anybody so far in the first sector. The man who is slightly relieved is Ralf Schumacher, but still remaining fourth despite his error, so the rest of his lap must have been pretty good. But Sato should be about to blow that and just about everything else away.
Yeah, puts Montoya's lap into perspective, doesn't it? 4/10 up already after just 2 sectors. As I was saying before, this BAR working well. The last time we were at a high downforce circuit was the Nürburgring, and you'll recall that the BAR team weren't particularly impressive there. The pace simply wasn't there on their comeback after their 2-race ban. But they've been working hard on it, particularly Anthony Davidson working hard in testing at Jerez to sort the high downforce out. And look at that, 7.5 tenths faster, and Sato becomes the first man to dip into the 1:14 as Mercedes boss Norbert Haug reads his notes. And well, they've done a lot of work on this car. They're disappointed that they're in the position they're in, just with no points on the board halfway through the season, but there's no way it's going to stay like that, because this is a very good car, and the Honda engine in the back of it, there's nothing wrong with that at all. They're starting to find the sweet spot now, the BAR team.
Yeah, the car looks great all around the circuit. Surely that's a 3-stop fuel. We've had 3 fake poles recently, which kind of annoys me, and it's difficult to read this to a certain extent. I think Jensen's pole was fake in Canada in terms of he had much less fuel than the people around him. Heidfeld's definitely in Nürburgring. We know that to be the case, and of course we don't think truly in Indianapolis even had enough fuel to get out of his own way, because they didn't expect to race, and they were proven to be right, of course.
Well, Alonso, World Championship leader, driving a French car here on French soil. Stuck it on pole here last year. Finished second to Michael Schumacher in the race, but he gave him a really good run for his money in a car that was nowhere near a match for the Ferrari here last season. What can he do? He's got a tremendous opportunity here with Kimi Räikkönen penalised, having to take an engine penalty for an engine change. 10 places back on the grid. If indeed Räikkönen goes out here this afternoon, some suggestion he might not do that, might play a different strategy and start tomorrow's race from the pit lane. We will find out. Räikkönen due out in 4 cars' time, but Alonso at the moment on target for the 3rd pole of the season for him and Renault. Still a lot of big names to come, but this has been a nice lap from Fernando Alonso. 1 or 2 people here supporting the Renault team in the grandstands. Across the line he goes to take 2.5 tenths off Sato's benchmark. That is the fastest lap we've seen so far this afternoon. It puts Alonso quickest ahead of Sato, Montoya 3rd, Massa 4th and Villeneuve 5th. Next man out in a minute will be Alonso's teammate Fisichella, who was fastest in practice this morning.
1:14.655. 3rd is Montoya, 1:15.406. 4th is Felipe Massa, 1:15.566. 5th is Jacques Villeneuve, 1:15.699. 6th, Ralf Schumacher, 1:15.771. 7th, Mark Webber, 1:15.885. 8th, Nick Heidfeld, 1:16.207. 9th, David Coulthard, 1:16.434. And 10th, Christian Klein, 1:16.547. The next 5 to come are Giancarlo Fisichella, Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen, Jarno Trulli, and then Patrick Friesacker. Those are the next 5.
Et voilà, les 10 premiers pilotes sont passés, il en reste 10 et dans le 3e paquet de pilotes à venir. Attention à Giancarlo Fisichella sur la Renault numéro 6 qui sera le premier à s'élancer de ce 3e paquet de pilotes. Giancarlo Fisichella va prendre la piste devant Jenson Button. Nous aurons suivi, attention à Kimi Räikkönen, nous aurons Jarno Trulli, l'homme en pole position à Indianapolis il y a 15 jours, et nous aurons la première de 2017 de Patrick Friesacker.
Parce que par rapport à Thomas Sobu, je crois 3e dans le classement.
Et 3e, oui.
On va peut-être essayer de pour l'instant ici. How is my name?
No, it's a short little fast race, so we need to be quicker. Unfortunately, we don't have any short exit at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Marc Deborah, pour l'instant, qui nous donner ses impressions. Nous te voyons que vous voulez traduire. Dans un film, c'est un problème de vitesse.
Et il est assez content, mais enfin, il faut faire tout ça. La base de c'est
on peut représenter peut-être que c'est un tout petit peu techniquement ça continue également
Qualifying for tomorrow's French Grand Prix here at Magny-Cours. Get a pin and a map of France, stick it straight in the middle of the map of France, and you'll probably put it through the commentary box we're standing in now. It's the middle of nowhere, it has a world-class racetrack in it, and Giancarlo Fisichella at the moment is out on track, just warming up, about to try and knock his teammate Fernando Alonso off provisional pole position. Alonso fastest, Sato second, Montoya third, Massa fourth, Villeneuve fifth. And as I said before, Fisichella was the fastest man in practice this morning. A little bit down after the early season that he's had. He's had all the bad luck in this team, really. Only 17 points on the board in what is a winning car. Is this the weekend he starts to turn it around again?
Well, as you say, he's been fast, he knows the place extremely well. It's a very technical racetrack. If you know which way to drive it and where the important points are, and in a couple of corners you take unusual lines through them. At the moment he is a fraction up, but that's not enough to relax with. Down into 180, there's always more grip right on the inside, and he was a long while getting there. But he straightens the car up nicely. He's using less track than Alonso at the moment, Fisichella. He's neater and tidier, but it's cost him time.
Well, his first sector was faster than Alonso's. His second sector, just a tenth slower, so there's very little to choose between them. This ought to put him second at the very least, but if he's had a good final sector, then he might be able to do slightly better than that. Alonso, the fastest man so far in the final sector in the sister Renault car. Once again, the faithful get to their feet. Across the line he goes. He's lost a little time in the final sector and dropped behind Sato. You saw Fisichella just looking down a little bit there at his dashboard. He was looking to see the time. Now, maybe they know something we don't in terms of the relative fuel loads of Fisichella and Alonso. It's one of the unknown factors of qualifying as it is at the moment, single lap qualifying style. They remind you they carry the fuel in this session with which they'll start tomorrow's Grand Prix. Last year we saw Alonso go 14 laps into the race on the fuel he had. I think they'll go a little further than that tomorrow into the 70-lap Grand Prix on the fuel they have at the moment.
I'm looking forward to this lap of buttons. Fisichella tightened up. You could see him in the cockpit, tightened up as the lap came to a close. Just stopped letting the car flow almost. And that's a sign of a bit of pressure and tension. Sato currently on the front row in the sister BAR of the one that Button's driving. He had to hesitate a long time for getting on the throttle in the middle of the corner, as do most of the drivers. But Jensen with a great chance of a very, very solid grid position here. How's he done in the first sector? Well, he's 2/10 slower than his teammate. We don't know the corresponding fuel loads, but that is not a great first sector, whichever way you look at it.
Well, he likes this track. He likes the flow of it, he said. It's smooth and flowing, a bit like my driving. And certainly Jensen Button, with pole recently in Montreal, is back on form, looking to go into Silverstone next weekend, his home Grand Prix, with at least a podium, but losing time in the middle sector here as well. Now, Fisichella said yesterday that the last part of the lap in many ways is the most important here at Magny-Cours. Certainly proved to be costly for him. They spent 24 seconds in it. It's got 3 second gear corners in it, only 1 quick corner, so very important. This is the final part. What's Button done?
Yeah, the inevitable fourth, I'm afraid. He was about a tenth shy of his teammate in all of the sectors. That's popped him just behind Fisichella, so second and fourth for the 2 BARs, suggesting he's not on that different a fuel load. But the car just not able to quite carry the apex speeds and direction change speeds of Sato, no doubt about it. Jensen didn't quite have that razor edge of his teammate's car.
Well, we were asking whether Raikkonen would indeed do a lap. The answer is yes, he will. They've decided that 11th or 12th on the grid is good, and he's obviously carrying the right sort of fuel load for attacking the race that way. Can't afford to allow Alonso to get away from him. Alonso currently on provisional pole. Remember, he's 22 points behind him in the World Championship. This is the halfway stage. If Kimi can have a second half of the season identical to the one that Alonso had a first half, and vice versa, then there'll be nothing to choose between them. It's not unimaginable with a car like he has that Raikkonen could have a second half of the season like Alonso's first half. Certainly 4 wins in the next half season, entirely possible for this car and driver package.
So he had 2 wheels completely the other side of the curb there, which he's kind of entitled to do because that's the way the racetrack is and he can get away with it. But it just straightening all the corners out. There we go again. 2 wheels right on the green area, and that's not the racetrack.
Remember, Kimi has had an engine change. Whatever happens here, he'll go 10 places back on the grid from whatever position he gets. He would like that position to be fastest just for his own pride, I think, as much as anything else, and because it would make him 11th on the grid instead of 12th. Here he comes across the line, goes second fastest behind Alonso. So at the moment, that's a net 12th for him, but we've still got some other runners to come out. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
A lot of key people at Toyota saying they'd be very annoyed after this session if one of their cars, and that means this one, Jarno Trulli, isn't on the front row after this qualifying. So big things expected down here, but still Toyota, they're another one who can't get it right over the last chicane.
Well, Ralph we saw make a mistake and outbraked himself at the hairpin, and also was first runner, which is a big disadvantage this afternoon. But truly, and that car did look truly sensational down in turn 1 and 2 just before this session when they were last out in free practice. The Toyota is working well, and he has I can understand them being disappointed if they're not right in the thick of the action, but he's a tenth shy, or a fraction shy down at the hairpin.
3/100ths of a second slower than Fernando Alonso in the 24-second first sector. Ralf Schumacher in the sister car was second fastest this morning to Giancarlo Fisichella in free practice. A 14.6 was Ralf Schumacher's time. That wouldn't be good enough at the moment to anything better than third. So Trulli needs to find a little bit more speed if he's to stick this car on pole position for the second Grand Prix in succession. 9/100ths of a second now. He's lost 6/100ths. It's nothing. It's a metre or so over the course of the lap so far. And in the final sector then, which has such bad memories for Jarno Trulli, this point right here is where Rubens Barrichello dived past him, remember, on the last lap of last year's Grand Prix to deny Renault 2 cars on the podium. A very swirly exit from the final chicane puts him ahead of Raikkonen, but behind Alonso. So at the moment, they've got their front row start slot, but I fancy the two Ferraris are going to be trying to knock them off that.
You could well be right there, but I think that's good effort from Trulli, and I think it highlights the even better effort from Alonso. Alonso really, he has to make hay while the sun is shining. Raikkonen with a 10th place grid drop. Michael Schumacher's been on the ascendancy recently, and Alonso's certainly doing his best to counter all of that. Fastest at the moment, with only, I think, one serious player left who could knock him off that pole position, and that's Michael Schumacher.
Well, the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that we now have a Minardi out on track. We'll have another one in a minute. Why is this? Why are they going so late in the session? Well, it's because, if you remember, at Indianapolis, only 6 cars took part in the race. The two Minardis were 5th and 6th. And as everybody else withdrew from the race, we've had all the Michelin runners so far. Now we get onto the Bridgestone runners who did run in Indianapolis. And it's Frisacker followed by Albers, then Carter Kay and Montero. And finally, the two Ferraris, Barrichello and Michael Schumacher, will go out last. Minardi, impressively, a second a lap faster, Martin, than they were here last year, despite the fact we've had a rule change this year, taking 30% of the downforce away, 2 race engines and all the rest of it. So they've managed to find speed in comparison to last year. And at the moment, certainly throughout free practice, they've been quicker than the Jordans.
Yes, they certainly are getting this car working nicely. They were, what were they, about 5 seconds off pole position pace or front-running pace, and now it's down to 3.5. So, and the car looked good, didn't it? The car looked quite well balanced through that lap. So Frisacker into the 1:17, and Luis Goodman has found the current pole sitter, Fernando Alonso.
Fernando, pole man last year. What do you reckon the chances are of starting this race from the front of the grid again?
I think last year was a fantastic race for us, because the R24 was not performing very well, and here we had a very good race. So we are extremely confident with this year's car to have a good race again, and so far has been a good weekend.
Who do you think is going to be your toughest opposition? McLaren again?
It seems that McLaren again are very, very quick, and I think for the race point of view, McLaren will be the big opponent.
Yep, no doubt about that. Zolt Baumgartner, you see on the right of the screen there, driver for Minardi last year, come back with a rather lurid T-shirt to visit a few of his old mates. Jenson Button, we saw a moment ago, going 6th fastest. Well, Louise has very quickly managed to leave Alonso behind and go and talk to Jenson.
Yeah, Jenson, you didn't look as though you were totally able to find the sweet spot there, maybe not so much as you have been over the rest of the weekend. Was that right?
Cheers, Louise. I was happy with it. You know, I did as much as I could do with the car. So yeah, I didn't make a mistake.
We saw Takuma, when he finished his run, he put on a headset and a radio and was obviously passing some information back to the team. Is that then relayed on to you?
No, Sometimes it is, but it wasn't today for some reason.
So generally speaking, what kind of shape do you think you're in for the race?
Well, we have to see where we end up in qualifying, but I'm reasonably happy. You know, it's not a bad position to be in. We can still do a lot from there, and obviously Kimi's got to go back 10 places, so that does help us.
Cheers, gents.
Yeah, it's a net 5th place at the moment for Jenson Button. Raikkonen currently 3rd. That will become 13th, but it may be worse than that by the time the 2 Ferraris have gone out on track. So once again, Alonso doing a super job in qualifying, and there's been a little bit of criticism of him in terms of his performances in qualifying, but when you go away afterwards race and you work out how much fuel he was carrying in the qualifying sessions, you adjust the times for fuel, time and again Alonso comes out as having done the best job.
Yeah, but he delivers every weekend, doesn't he? All kinds of different racetracks, conditions, dramas, and I think given everything that went on 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis and all the fuss that there's been since, if he can demonstrate he can keep his head at this moment. Remember back in Montreal where he started screaming over the radio about his teammate, and then eventually his teammate drops down, he goes and throws it into the wall with an unforced error, although he was pushing hard at the time. He just had you wondering where Alonso's head, because this is a head game now. Michael Schumacher knows how to win world championships, and he's suddenly cruising up behind them. And can the younger guys keep their head? And for me, Alonso's showing very clearly today that he can.
Yes, Raikkonen and not quite matching him for speed. We don't know how much fuel he's carrying, of course, at the moment, Kimi Raikkonen, but he will go 10 places back on the grid. But Raikkonen bouncing back from an engine change, which is the reason he'll drop 10 places back on the grid. So all these little challenges and pitfalls, these brass tacks put on the road in front of the drivers to try and trip them up and cause them problems. And as you say, Martin, with Michael Schumacher coming up strongly, Ferrari very much the form team at the moment. Last 3 Grand Prix, they've taken 42 points, which is an average of 14 points a race. So it wasn't just a big payday in Indianapolis. They've been on form ever since the Nürburgring, and everybody painfully aware of that at Renault and McLaren. Here we are then, riding on board with Christian Albers. Talking of points, Minardi. Plenty of energy going on behind the wheel for Narain Karthikeyan. Always a lot of action and drama where he's driving. He's going to catch the recovering Minardi from the looks of things. Not quite sure where he's going to catch him. I just saw a flash of him in the corner of my eye. And, well, the B-Spec Jordan. Whoa, big slide there for Karthikeyan. The B-Spec Jordan that we're hoping to have ran here in Friday in the hands of Robert Dornbos, the third driver, but it's not quite reliable enough yet to make its appearance. And certainly here with the pressure that Minardi are putting onto them, I think that they really want to get that Jordan through as quickly as possible.
Yeah, most of the teams have now, I mean, we were expecting a 25% penalty of aero this year. They've got that down to 5 or 6%, and that demonstrates, I think, why Jordan will be keen to get their new car out sooner rather than later. But right now, Carter Kine has put his car, as Jordan, way ahead of the two Minardis.
Yeah, good effort there from Carter Kane. We'll find out tomorrow what the relative fuel loads of the two were. He had a less lurid slide than Christian Albers. Nevertheless, plenty of effort there. Here's Thiago Monteiro then, on the podium 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis. First time ever that a Portuguese driver had stood on a Formula One podium. The circumstances were exceptional, but nevertheless, it was his and there for the taking. The Michelin teams didn't have a tyre to compete with Bridgestone on the day, so whatever happens, I think he'd have been on the podium. So you can't take it away from him. But I wonder what his bonus money was, because you imagine signing a contract to drive for Jordan in 2005, and you say, well, what happens if I get on the podium then? And they say, oh, well, we'll give you $3 million if you get on the podium, because the chances of that happening are zero. And then, of course, you have a situation like Indianapolis and a big payday. I did ask him that question on the way home, and he said, it's a lot of money.
It might be for the team, but I'd be surprised if he's getting any money at all, frankly. I think he's probably taking money to the team in terms of sponsorship, and he'll have to take his slice out of that. He might be on some kind of points bonus, but I would be surprised. Whereas he, compared to his teammate, well, he's a fraction faster in the middle sector, about the same in the first. So, surprisingly, both Jordans could well end up ahead of both the Minardis.
Yep, it would be against the form of free practice, but perhaps they weren't showing their true colours in free practice. Minardi fancied they were going to get the Jordans today, and it looks like they're not. Well, they've got one of them. Carter Kane, Frisacker, Monteiro, Albers is the back of the grid special. Jordan, Minardi, Jordan, Minardi. And we've got just the two Ferraris to come. And Ted Kravitz has some news for us.
Yeah, and I'm afraid to say the brain drain has been continuing at Jordan. Remember, Trevor Carlin, their sporting director, walked out. But now their head of engineering, Paul Monahan, has walked out and left the team. He's joined Red Bull. He's a very clever bloke. Used to engineer Alonso at Renault, did Monahan. And now he's gone. So it's a big loss to Jordan.
Yeah, he used to engineer Jenson Button as well when he was at the Benetton and then the Renault team. So he's joining Mark Smith, who he worked with very closely at Renault, who was briefly in the Jordan team and has now transferred to Red Bull, so he's joining one of his old muckers. People do tend to like working with the same people and tend to follow them around from team to team. Now Paul Monahan has joined Mark Smith at Red Bull. Here's Rubens Barrichello then. A quote this weekend saying he was committed to Ferrari to the end of 2006 after recent rumours that he might be looking around for something else, but still people suggesting that there's a possibility Rubens might go somewhere else for next season. It's still very much up in the air. As I said before, Ferrari the form team at the moment, and the way that you get this field spread, Barrichello 100th up on Alonso, the way the field spreads out in the early part of the Grand Prix, 2005 style, I think Ferrari really want to take control of this Grand Prix, try and get themselves up at the front of the grid, and that looks to be the strategy here for Barrichello and probably Michael Schumacher as well, get themselves up at the front.
Yep, looking handy for Rubens, still a fraction up. It's all down to these last few corners. Car looking nicely bolted down to the racetrack. High line, very high line for turn in to Chateau d'Eau, so you can get the car straightened up a bit, give a bit on the way in, gain on the way out, and all the way down what is effectively a straight for a Formula One car, despite that rather large left kink. Now launch it across the curbs, don't hit the throttle too early, otherwise you're straight into the traction control. And he's had a horrible final sector. Barrichello goes P5, a net P4 after Raikkonen takes his penalty, and he'll be studying that closely later on to see where that all disappeared to. Horrible towards the end, no mistakes. He was very high in that Chateau d'Eau corner though.
Yeah, he was. It's half a second that he's lost in the final sector. Flavio is looking through his fingers more or less at this. He really desperately wants a Renault pole and a Renault victory here on French soil, especially with no French driver in the field. First time in 40 years there's not been a French driver taking part in the French Grand Prix, but a French company is leading both world championships and looking pretty strong at the moment.
Nobody likes to see that with the French drivers, but they had this campaign with Elf. They brought a bunch of drivers through, didn't they? Bernard, Comas, Panis, Prost, I think, was at the beginning of all of that, and that stopped, and so have the French drivers. Michael Schumacher then, the last man on the track as the winner of the previous Grand Prix. Where can he put the Ferrari? Barrichello's P5 at the moment in the sister car. We're expecting a hot lap here. Can he beat Alonso? And take the initiative and put the pressure on everybody else.
Well, certainly he's worked out recently that you want to be up the front of the grid. You take a bit of fuel out if you're not quite competitive enough to do it on merit, and you get yourself up there because you don't want to be part of the field spreading out in the early part of the Grand Prix. He's up at the moment after the first sector. He's lost count of how many times he's won this Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher. It's brought him some really sweet memories as well. He even clinched a World Championship here. That's how dominant he was a few years ago. This early in the season to clinch a World Championship. It's much more of a struggle for him this year, and he's lost ground in the middle sector.
All the Bridgestone runners are struggling towards the end of the lap. And remember, the Minardis and Jordans, it showed up as big, leery armfuls of opposite lock and scary moments. But I think also we saw Barrichello fading as the lap unfolded. And are we seeing the same thing from Michael Schumacher? Can he do some damage limitation, get himself in the top two rows? Car a bit out of shape in the final corner. He goes P4, that's a net third. He's a fraction behind Raikkonen. Raikkonen will drop 10 places, so he heads up the second row. And Alonso again then with a brilliant performance for his second consecutive pole here in Magny-Cours. Louise has found Jarno Trulli.
Well, Jarno, I know that the team were expecting big things this weekend, and based on that performance, it looks like you could well be in a position to deliver them.
Yeah, I must say that, I must admit, yesterday I wasn't very happy, but we have changed things a little bit around today with the car setup, and we're looking much stronger than we were yesterday, and car handling is very good, and we are very close to the top team, and again, another very strong, good lap in qualifying.
How close and how strong do you think you'll be?
I think we can be strong during the race. This morning, during the long run, we were quite good, quite competitive. Even if tomorrow weather forecast is slightly different, more sunny, hotter, but should be better for us.
Another front row start then for Jarno Trulli. Another pole position for Fernando Alonso, the 6th of his career and the 3rd of the season. 2nd in a row here at Magny-Cours, France. Tomorrow he'll chase his 5th Grand Prix victory. McLaren are very strong here as well, but today Montoya in 9th and Raikkonen 13th net after you add the engine penalty drop of 10 places. Means it's a tall order tomorrow for McLaren and what should be a spellbinding French Grand Prix.
Well, I think it's a perfect result, Gary, for French Grand Prix, French team, championship leader on pole position. Fernando Alonso, a brilliant lap from him, but chased very, very hard by Jarno Trulli and Raikkonen.
Yeah, that was a super lap from Trulli, you've got to say. So much quicker than Ralf Schumacher. We did see Ralf go wide. He did go out first in the session, but it's hard to believe that he would have lost a second to lap to Trulli. So I think it's an exceptional lap from Jarno.
We've got Kimi Raikkonen down in 3rd position. He is going to drop down to 13th because of the penalty for changing his engine. But Pablo Montoya, man, we expected so much of him, and he's all the way down there. He's in 9th position.
Yeah, and also a long way away. I think nearly a second slower than his teammate, and he didn't go sideways or he didn't lose any time as Ralf did. So I think, like you say, very disappointing. We really wanted to see Montoya take this fight to Raikkonen and fight with him at the front of the field, and I think McLaren need that in order for their manufacturers' championship, and it's just not working out for him.
Doesn't seem to be working out. Also with Raikkonen losing the 10 places, you needed Montoya there to go and pressurise the likes of Alonso and Trulli. Alonso, yes, of course he wants to win the races, extend his points, but he's more concerned about where Raikkonen is, and if he all has to do is just finish ahead of Raikkonen, and Schumacher maybe at this stage he's got to worry about him, but maybe it's still got a bit of time on his side.
Yeah, that's right. Reliability is going to count big time here, and like you said, as long as he finishes ahead of Raikkonen, he's doing a good job. We've passed halfway point in the season now. Whoever's going to win the title needs to bring him some big points.
Well, we're just waiting for the interviews with the top 3 drivers. I assume, I'm not too sure if Kimi Raikkonen will actually go up or Michael Schumacher, because Raikkonen, we know, will lose the 10 places. You've got to say, great lap from Takuma Sato, putting the car there in 5th. We don't know fuel levels of any of the drivers, so it is difficult, but a great lap from the BAR Honda driver.
Yeah, good to see BAR up there. I think it's shown the car has certainly got potential, and it can be a consistent point scorer, just provided they've got reliability on their side.
Rubens Barrichello was also having a fantastic lap. The last sector, unfortunately, lost time, just as we saw Michael Schumacher lose time.
Yeah, but Rubens' time was big. It was 4 tenths or 5
half
tenths
a second
in the last sector alone. So that was really disappointing for him. Up until then, he was looking fantastic. So, not too sure why. Is it the Bridgestone tyres that came off towards the end of the lap? We don't really know. Yeah. But nevertheless, very, very disappointing. I felt quite sore to see Rubens lose so much time.
Yeah, because he was really looking fantastic. Same must be said for Fisichella. Alonso puts in a sublime lap. Fisi goes out out there. Looks good until sector 2, and then also it just fell apart.
And what's amazing, in free practice, these guys are all able to put the times together and put the laps together, and when it matters, it doesn't quite work out as we expect. Again, as you mentioned, we don't know what the fuel loads are, so we can't really say, but just judging by some of the reactions from the teams, there's a couple of disappointed faces there.
Yeah, I think we really want to see Montoya do the business. We think after Canada he should have that should have been his race, and unfortunately it just went wrong for him with the safety car period. But unfortunately it didn't work out. There we go, former teammates Alonso and Trulli both chuffed to be up there. I'm just delighted for Jarno Trulli. Nearly claimed a second pole for Toyota. One where we know they're going to be racing, but a man who's really coming to his own, very mature racing driver, and let's hope that Toyota have given him a car that he can go 70 laps at a very consistent pace.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow, but I think Toyota is getting better, but like you said, race pace is what counts. But I think this has really been the year of Jarno Trulli. This is when I think he's proved himself as a Formula 1 driver and come into his own. He's really, I think, beaten his highly rated teammate in Ralf Schumacher.
Well, we go further down the grid. Felipe Massa just getting one on Villeneuve. I think a great result for both of them. But BMW Williams,
that the whole team has been disappointing, and now the mudslinging match is going to go on now between BMW Williams. Well, it's the engine, it's the chassis. So they're on a downhill spiral, unfortunately for them.
Not pretty. A great crowd there at Magny-Cours. You can see a complete delight as Renault bags a pole position with Fernando Alonso, the championship leader at the French Grand Prix. I don't think they could have expected a better result. So all falling into their hands, with Alonso knowing that his chief rival is going to be starting from 13th tomorrow. Just waiting for the three drivers to get into the conference room for the post-qualifying press conference, just to find out what they had to say. No real moments. Ralf Schumacher maybe just in the first lap outbreaking himself at Adelaide. Besides that, everybody having a pretty decent run.
Yeah, I think just getting qualifying went on pretty uninterrupted at the stay dry, which is what we wanted, and we could at least get some true indication. I think it's worked out perfectly. But I think also you've got to mention the Ferrari Michael Schumacher. I think they've really come back strong.
Sure.
We know what happened the last couple of GPs, but this is now on merit. This position that he's just earned here, so it's going to be interesting to see how those tyres last in the race compared to the Michelin tyres.
And the strategies that will unfold. I don't know what the delay is in Magny-Cours. Maybe they're also trying to decide, does Raikkonen go in or does Michael Schumacher go in for the press conference, but we'll cross over to them. Tomorrow, weather, big factor. We're not sure. They have predicted that it's going to be very hot tomorrow, but we haven't seen any sign of that so far, any clearing so far at Magny-Cours.
Yeah, certainly the heat would also, I think give the team something to think about, in the sense that they've set the cars up in these conditions. The track temperature tomorrow is a lot higher. As we know, they can't change the car now. They have qualified with the setup that they've got, so they can't change little things to suit their cars to the weather.
Now there we see Michael Schumacher in the pit garage, so it looks like Raikkonen will be going up there. Some peculiar delay getting this to you. There we go, let's have a listen.
To the fastest three qualifiers in the French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours. Third quickest for West McLaren Mercedes, Kimi Raikkonen. Second fastest for Panasonic Toyota, Jarno Trulli. And on the pole for the third time this year for Mild 7 Renault, Fernando Alonso. Fernando, what a great place for you to be on the pole yet again.
Yeah, last year I had the pole here, the only one of the 2004 season, and I came here with good optimism and very confident about this year's car and this characteristics of the Magny-Cours circuit. So, whole weekend has been good for us, and the quali lap as well, with no mistakes, with a very, very good balance in the car. So everything went well today.
A very nice looking lap, but a lot of pressure, of course. Half a second covering the top 7 drivers.
Yeah, we knew that. Always here in Magny-Cours is very, very tight, the times, and we knew that every tenth of the second is important for the quali lap here in Magny-Cours. So I pushed from the beginning. I felt the car straight away. Good balance in turn 3, in turn 5. So give me even extra confidence for the rest of the lap, especially the last sector. So I was extremely happy with the lap.
And perhaps even more support than last year following your success so far this season. Lots of blue out there in the stands.
Yeah, a lot is after, I think, with Barcelona Grand Prix, the only two tracks we see more blue than red. And obviously for them, I think it's also a good day. And for tomorrow, the grid position we are, because also Giancarlo is in the top guys, I think we can have a very, very strong race in our team.
We look forward to that. Thank you very much. Jarno, congratulations. Your 5th appearance here as a top 3 driver in qualifying in 2005. It's getting to be a real pattern for you.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when we started the season that we were performing so high, and I keep doing a very good job together with the team and all the engineers and mechanics. So we are extremely happy about our season. We have had some bad luck in the last few races, as we could get some more podium, but nevertheless we're still here fighting. Another good lap today in qualifying and another first row.
And your thoughts on the competitive nature of qualifying and the strategies we're going to see in the race tomorrow? Usually a lot of pit stops here.
Yeah, you're right. And normally we do 2-3 pit stops, and we will get a better idea on what fuel everybody has run today. We'll definitely see different strategy, and the race normally here is like a game, and you play it on the strategy at the pit stop.
We look forward to seeing that game tomorrow. Kimi, turning to you, obviously a bittersweet moment for you, 3rd quickest, but unfortunately that engine problem yesterday, changing engines and having to start effectively 13th on the grid tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so. It was not the best way to start the weekend yesterday, to blow up the engine, but what can you do, it's going to cost us a lot this weekend, but at least the car was very good, and I think so we will have a good, strong race, but unfortunately not where we should start, so we just need to wait and see where the others are stopping, and then we can really tell.
Well, of course, that is the next point. How's that affected your thinking on strategy?
We see tomorrow. Did we do the right decision or not? But I think so. I'm very confident. The car felt very good in the qualifying, so we just need to wait and see, really, and that's the only thing. I still think that we can hopefully get close to the podium at least, if not on a podium, and we see.
And Fernando, finally turning back to you, that of course lets your friend Michael Schumacher effectively start 3rd in the Ferrari. And I need to remind you, it's been 22 years since Renault last won the French Grand Prix as a complete team. So a big day for you tomorrow and a big day for the team.
Yeah, of course, every race is important, but for the team, we know that here in France it's even more important. I think 6,000 people are here inviting from the team, from the Renault dealers, and a lot of big names of the Renault group will come here tomorrow and try to beat Ferrari and McLaren and Toyota tomorrow. I think is our target, and we can do it, I think, this weekend, because it has been really, really strong for us performing wise all weekend.
Well, best of luck to you. We can have some words from you.